November 1985, Hamburg studio, 2:37 p.m., recording session for the third album. Modern Talking was 2 albums deep, both successful, both platinum. The formula worked. Dieter composed, Thomas sang, they fought, they succeeded. They repeated, today's song, new ballad, slower tempo, more emotional. Dieter had written it the previous week, brought it in complete, melody, arrangement, lyrics, ready to record. Thomas had learned the vocal overnight, practiced it, knew it, ready to deliver. They'd been recording for 90 minutes, multiple takes. The verse was done, clean, professional, now working on the bridge, the transition section, the part that connected verse to chorus. Dieter played it back, listened, frowned. Something wasn't quite right, not wrong, just not perfect. He played it again. Thomas listened through the headphones, also heard it, also sensed something off. The melody line in that section felt predictable, safe, not bad, just expected. It didn't lift the way it should, didn't create the emotional peak needed before the chorus dropped. Thomas removed his headphones. Can we try something? Dieter looked up from the mixing board. Try what? The bridge, the melody. What if instead of going up on forever, it went down, created more contrast before the lift? Silence. Dieter stared at him, not angry, not dismissive, just assessing. Thomas continued. I was practicing it last night, and I kept feeling like the up movement was expected. But if we inverted it, dropped instead of rose, it might create more tension, make the chorus hit harder when it comes. Dieter's expression didn't change. You were practicing it. Yeah, learning the vocal, and I noticed, and you decided the melody was wrong. Not wrong, just that there might be a better option, a small change, just that one phrase. A better option than what I wrote. Thomas heard the tone shift. Careful, this was dangerous territory. Not better, different, just a suggestion. A suggestion about the melody. Yes. The melody I composed, I know, let me ask you something, Thomas. Dieter stood up, walked closer. Do you understand what your job is here? Thomas felt the room temperature drop. This wasn't creative discussion, this was something else. My job, yes, your role in modern talking. Do you understand what that is? I sing, I perform, I interpret, you sing what I write. The sentence hung, clear, definitive, unmistakable. Thomas didn't respond. Waiting, Dieter continued. You sing the words I write, over the melodies I compose, to the arrangements I create. That's your job, that's your contribution. You sing. I understand that, but do you? Because suggesting changes to the melody implies you think you're a composer. Are you a composer, Thomas? No, but are you a producer? No. Are you an arranger? No, but you're a singer, a very good singer. That's why you're here. That's what you contribute. You take what I create and you give it voice. You perform it, you sell it, but you don't create it. You don't write it. You don't compose it. You execute what I design. The words were surgical, precise, not shouted, not emotional, clinical, factual, final. Thomas felt them land, felt them cut. I was just trying to what? Improve my work, correct my composition, show me that you know better. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Thomas struggled. How to explain without sounding like he was claiming creative authority. How to offer input without overstepping. The line was suddenly very clear, and he'd crossed it. I just thought, as the person singing it, I might have perspective on what works vocally, on what creates emotional impact. You have perspective on performance, on delivery, on how to sing what's written. That's valid, that's your expertise, but the composition, the melody, that's mine, that's what I do, that's what I studied, that's what I bring. If you have thoughts on how to sing a phrase, I'll listen. But if you're suggesting I change what I've written, that's not your role. The engineer sat in the corner, silent, uncomfortable, wishing he was anywhere else. This wasn't creative collaboration, this was power dynamics, this was hierarchy being established, enforced, made explicit. Thomas wanted to argue, wanted to push back. Wanted to say that good partnerships value all input, that creativity benefits from multiple perspectives, that singers aren't just instruments, that interpretation is creation. But he was also technically aware that Dieter was right. Dieter did write the melodies, did create the arrangements, did compose the songs. Thomas sang them, exceptionally, professionally, but he sang what was given, he didn't write it. That was the division of labor, that was the partnership structure. Acknowledging creative input blurred that line, made the roles unclear, and Dieter clearly wanted the roles very clear. Can we just record it as written? Dieter asked, not really a question, an instruction masked as inquiry. Yeah, of course. Thomas returned to the vocal booth, put on his headphones. The engineer reset the track. Dieter pressed record. Thomas sang the bridge exactly as written, melody going up on forever as composed, predictable, safe, expected, exactly what Dieter had created. He nailed it, perfect pitch, perfect timing, perfect delivery of someone else's work, of Dieter's work, of his assigned role. The take ended, Dieter listened back, nodded, good. That's the one. Moving on, they continued recording, finished the song, completed the session, professional, efficient, cold. Something had shifted, something fundamental. The conversation had redefined them, made explicit what had been implicit. Thomas was the voice, Dieter was the creator, partnership implied equality. But this wasn't equal, this was hierarchical, employer and employee, creator and instrument, composer and performer, not partners. Executors of clearly defined roles. When Thomas left the studio that evening, he sat in his car, replayed the conversation, the clinical precision of it. You sing what I write, not we create together, not our collaboration, not partnership. You execute, I design, that's the structure. He'd known it, of course, in theory, had understood the division of labor, but knowing and hearing it stated explicitly were different things. Knowing left room for ambiguity, for gray areas, for moments where input might be valued, for collaboration in the margins. Explicit definition removed that, created clarity, drew boundaries, established authority. He started the car, drove home, felt something he hadn't felt before, not anger, not resentment, something more subtle, diminishment. Like he'd been reduced, from artist to technician, from creator to tool, from partner to employee. The role was clear now: sing what's written, don't question, don't suggest, don't create, execute. Dieter stayed in the studio, listening to the day's recordings. The bridge sounded good, as written, as composed, correct, but Thomas's suggestion lingered, the inverted melody, dropping instead of rising, creating contrast. It wasn't a bad idea. Technically it might have worked, might have created more tension, might have made the chorus hit harder, but that wasn't the point. The point was maintaining clarity, structure, authority. If Thomas started making compositional suggestions, where did it end? Today the bridge, tomorrow the verse, eventually the whole song, the arrangement, the production, the creative vision. Boundaries existed for a reason, roles existed for purpose. If everyone did everything, nothing got done. Someone had to lead, someone had to decide, someone had to have final authority. In modern talking, that was him, had to be him, because he was the composer, the producer, the creative engine. Thomas was the voice. Essential, irreplaceable in his role, but still a role, not the vision, the execution of the vision. Dieter packed up, locked the studio. The conversation had been necessary, uncomfortable but necessary. Establishing clear roles prevented future confusion, prevented overreach, prevented the kind of creative conflicts that destroyed partnerships. Better to be clear now than ambiguous forever. He drove home, satisfied he'd handled it correctly, professionally. The hierarchy was established, the roles were defined. Modern talking could continue operating efficiently, clearly, without confusion about who did what. That night, Thomas told his girlfriend about the session, about the suggestion, about Dieter's response. He said, I just sing what he writes, that I don't create, that my job is to execute his vision. She listened, heard the hurt under the words. Do you agree with him? Thomas considered. Technically, yes, he writes the songs, I sing them, that's the structure, that's how it works. But it feels reductive, like singing is just technical, like interpretation doesn't matter, like the emotional delivery, the phrasing, the way I sell the lyric, like that's not creative, like that's just execution. It is creative, I know. But he doesn't see it that way. He sees composition as creation, performance as execution, two different categories, two different values. What are you going to do? What can I do? He's right about the roles. I do sing what he writes. That is the structure. Arguing about it won't change anything. We'll just create more conflict. So you just accept it. I accept the reality, whether I like the framing or not. He didn't sleep well that night, kept replaying it. You just sing what I write. The reduction, the dismissal of interpretation as creation, the clear hierarchy, the explicit role definition. He'd been told his place, and his place was secondary. The incident became a reference point, internalized, unspoken but present. When creative discussions happened, Thomas stayed in his lane. Vocal delivery, phrasing, performance, never composition, never arrangement, never melody. The boundary was clear. He didn't cross it, but he also felt it. Felt the limitation, felt the reduction of his contribution. The band members noticed the shift, subtle but real. Thomas less engaged in studio discussions, less offering thoughts, less Participating beyond his assigned role. You okay? The keyboard player asked during a break. Yeah, fine. You seem different, more quiet, just focused on the vocals, staying in my lane. The keyboard player heard something in that, something resigned, but didn't push. This was modern talking business, not his place. The manager noticed too. You and Diet are okay. Yeah, why? Just seems like the dynamic's different, more formal. We're just being clear about roles. He composes. I sing, keeps things simple. Simple can be good, can also be limiting. Thomas didn't respond. What was there to say? The dynamic was what it was. Arguing wouldn't change it, might make it worse. Better to accept, adapt, execute the assigned role. 3 months later. Different song, different session. Dieter presented a lyric change, last-minute revision. The original line, I'll never let you go. New version, I won't ever let you go. Small change, grammatically identical, different syllable stress. Thomas sang it, both versions. Listen back. The original flows better. I'll never has better rhythm than I won't ever. Dieter considered, nodded. You're right, keep the original. Thomas felt a small victory. Input on execution, on delivery, on the technical aspects of singing. That was acceptable. That was his domain, not creation, but execution expertise, small but present. He'd found the boundary, where his input was valued, performance decisions, delivery choices, technical vocal considerations, not composition, not melody, not arrangement, but within his defined role he had authority. It wasn't partnership, but it was something, a defined space where his expertise mattered, where his voice, literal and metaphorical, had weight. The November session became a teaching moment, painful but clarifying. Roles had been ambiguous, now they were explicit. Thomas was the singer, exceptional, essential, but not the creator. Dieter was the creator, the composer, the vision, the authority. Modern talking operated within that structure, clear hierarchy, defined roles, explicit boundaries. Years later, during the 1998 reunion negotiations, the conversation resurfaced. We need to discuss creative input, Thomas said. I'm the composer, that hasn't changed, I know, but I want to be clear that my input on performance and delivery is valued, not dismissed. It was never dismissed. In 1985 November, you told me I just sing what you write, that I don't create. Dieter paused, remembered. I was establishing boundaries. You were establishing hierarchy. Same thing. No, it's not. Boundaries are mutual. Hierarchy is power structure. Okay, fair, I was establishing hierarchy, and I'd do it again, because someone has to have final creative authority. Otherwise nothing gets decided. I'm not arguing against that, but the way it was framed, like singing isn't creative work, like interpretation doesn't matter, that was reductive. You're right, the framing was harsh. I was making a point about roles, could have done it better. This time, can we acknowledge that composition and performance are both creative, different roles? But both creative, yes, I can acknowledge that. And can I offer input on composition without being told to stay in my lane? You can offer input, I retain final decision authority. But I'll listen, consider, not dismiss. That's all I'm asking, to be heard, not just executed. The reunion worked better because of this conversation, clearer roles but mutual respect within them. Dieter still composed, Thomas still sang. But the hierarchy was less rigid, the dismissiveness less present, the reduction less pronounced. Input was heard, considered, sometimes accepted, sometimes declined, but heard. The 2003 final breakup happened for many reasons, but the fundamental dynamic remained. Dieter created, Thomas executed, partnership in name, hierarchy in practice. Some structures can't change. Can only be managed, made more respectful, but not transformed. In 2014, a music journalist asked Thomas about songwriting. Did you ever write for Modern Talking? No, that was Dieter's role. He composed, I sang. Did you want to? Thomas considered. I had ideas, suggestions, mostly about performance, sometimes about composition, but that wasn't my role, wasn't my contribution. Do you wish it had been different? I wish the distinction between composition and performance had been framed with more respect for both. Composition is creative, so is interpretation. Both matter, both require artistry. The hierarchy implied only one was true creation. That felt wrong, still feels wrong. Did you ever tell Dieter that? In 1998, yes, we addressed it, made it more mutual. But the fundamental structure remained. He created, I executed. That was modern talking, for better and worse. The November 1985 session defined something essential, not just roles, but value, not just who did what, but what mattered. Composition mattered, performance mattered less, creation mattered, execution was secondary, the hierarchy was clear, the roles were explicit, and Thomas learned his place in the structure, in the partnership. In the creative process, he learned it in 4 words: you just sing. Not you create through singing, not you interpret creatively, just you sing. What I write, what I compose, what I create, you execute, you deliver, you perform. Your role is clear, stay in it. The sentence couldn't be unsaid, couldn't be softened, couldn't be reframed. Existed, clear, definitive, final, and it defined everything that followed, every session, every song, every interaction, every moment where Thomas might have offered input and didn't, every time he stayed in his lane, every time he remembered his place. You just sing what I write, 4 words, 1 sentence, complete redefinition, from partnership to hierarchy, from collaboration to execution, from artist to instrument. The day roles were defined. November 1985, Hamburg studio, 2:37 p.m. The moment Thomas Anders learned he wasn't a creator, he was a singer, and singing, according to the structure, wasn't creating. It was executing someone else's creation, someone else's vision, someone else's art. He was the voice, beautiful, essential, irreplaceable, but just the voice, not the vision. The vision belonged to Dieter, always had, always would. The November session just made it explicit, made it clear, made it undeniable. You just sing, that's your role, that's your contribution, that's your place. Accept it, embrace it, stay in it, and Thomas did for the rest of Modern Talking's existence. He stayed in his place, executed his role, sang what was written, exceptionally, but just sang, never created, never composed. Never crossed the boundary established that day, the boundary made explicit in 4 words: you just sing, the sentence that defined everything and couldn't be undefined, no matter how much respect was added later, no matter how much mutual acknowledgement happened. The fundamental truth remained: Dieter created, Thomas sang. That was Modern Talking. That was the hierarchy, that was the reality established in November 1985 and maintained until the end. Clear roles, explicit boundaries, defined hierarchy. 1 creator, 1 voice, not partnership, employment, respectful perhaps, successful certainly, but not equal, never equal. The roles wouldn't allow it.